Okay, welcome to another video by the Norwegian artist Knut Vikshåland. Today I'm going to show you one of my paintings that I painted actually back in 2013. It is the first painting in the series called The Human Condition. It is actually a large exhibition that I'm making, or I plan to make, for many years, and it kind of stopped because I got into some arthritis pain and depression and stuff, and I didn't manage to get that much done. But now, without pain and stuff, I'm ready to pick up that project and combine it with all my other projects, which is basically like the art of painting, or just painting in itself. I'm going to show you my thoughts in this painting. It is about, one of the segments in this painting is about obesity, but also about what leads to us self-destructing in the way we do. And if you can see here, this text, the greatest threat to humanity is not war or technology, but our inheritance from a lower origin, a brain that does not have a good communication between a desire and reason, and where self-deception is the norm rather than the exception. Now, I came up with this text and I cut it out in shablons, as it's called, and I sprayed it on top of the painting. I found this photo on internet today. Actually, I feel a little bit bad that I used this man. It's probably a photo he took of himself and sent to someone, and somebody put it out on the internet, and I painted it. So, you know, it's like there's something with it. You shouldn't. It's done now anyway, but I'm gonna tackle the problem with obesity again in later paintings, but I will make sure to neutralize the faces or make it so you can't see who the people are. And I think that is the right way to go, because you don't want to... I'm not after fat shaming, really. That's not my point. My point is just... It's you know, it's about free will. You know, do we really have a free will? Do anyone wake up in the morning and decide to become an alcoholic, or eat unhealthy foods, or just basically self-destruct? And at the same time, you can see the textures and the paint here. It's very rough painted. Now, the self-destruction is basically a result of unconscious choices. I don't even call it choices when we do things that is counteract our own well-being. It's more like the old system, hippocampus, the old system, which drives pleasure, sex, food, that kind of leaves us to destroy ourselves. Now, in this segment, I tackle poverty, and I actually saw some videos on YouTube the other day about people saving dogs in India, and I do absolutely empathize with suffering animals. Don't get me wrong. But for me, as I write in this text, animal rights, okay, but can't we start in a right end? Most people will spend thousands to save a fucking cat, while the tragedy that affects our fellow primates is overlooked with the ignorance only Homo sapiens can. And of course, Homo sapiens is the only species on this planet who can actually be ignorant, because ignorance comes from not knowing, and humanity is the only animal who actually knows anything, and that is due to our introspection. This photo was also found on internet. It's probably taken by Doctors Without Borders or some. It's very tragic. 22,000 kids die every day by starvation and lack of medicine, and there are basically 1 billion poor people living on $1 a day. In India alone, you have between 400,000 and 800,000 kids living on the streets, being subjected to sexual abuse and all these things. And people are saving stray dogs. We can start saving stray dogs the day we have solved all other problems, not before that. All resources should go to save children or people, humans. Every human being on the planet is you. It is you who is dying, okay? If you don't get that, you don't get anything. Every time a human being is suffering, it is actually you who is suffering. So think about that. Now, in this painting, I tackle the point war. And personally, I am for intervening, like in places like Afghanistan and places where you have dictators. I am for removing people who use their own people as personal slaves. And I know a lot of people disagree. I have no idea why. But okay, so in this, and when actually the thing with this painting, this boy has this, I found this pair also on internet. This boy has this ball, and he looks at this soldier, and the soldier looks back, and I thought when I saw it, don't throw the ball. When you have war, you will lose civilians, you will lose, it's called collateral damage. It's kind of a strange term, but that's what it is. But it's like during the Second World War, when the Allies went into Normandy, they had to bomb cities and stuff to weaken the Germans, and they lost an enormous amount of civilians. They also did the same in Norway, and all over the world. So that is why I wrote, it's not that I like the death of the innocent or war for its own sake, because I really don't. But I personally do not want to live in a society that is not willing to sacrifice me for a greater cause. Which means if I die in a bombing raid to save our freedoms, that is a sacrifice I'm willing to make. It is actually the sacrifice we have to make. We have to take our chances. And this also goes for breaking the law, doing bad stuff. You have to have laws, you have to have a functioning society, and you do something wrong, you get punished. And you have war, you need to take your chances. Yeah, it's very roughly painted, very sketchy. It's basically one of my most impressionist paintings. I sometimes wondered if I was going to paint more on it, but then because it's quite sketchy even here, but I think all over it has the same effect, because if I started to go deeper into this and do that more photorealistic, this was done from a very pixelated photo, so there would be too much of a difference between the two. And the same goes with this. I have to keep also this as sketchy as these ones to make this thing work in the composition. Okay, now the next segment, you can see me back in 2013 actually, spraying on all the things that and signing it, and I at the same time listening to our opening statement in a debate with Christopher Hitchens about the Iraq War, which I also find very interesting. My late hero, Christopher Hitchens, his master's voice, as I call him. I hope this gives you an idea of how I think and how I view the world. And I hope to start up this project, which is a huge project. It's going to be about everything from the greatest, most beautiful things humans do, great people, heroes of mine like Carl Sagan and people like that. But also it's going to be about science and, you know, beauty, everything beautiful, but also everything dark and horrible that happens to people by accident or by the hands of other people, from pornography to exploitation of people to the most beautiful artworks and science. And yeah, and also going to follow it up with an essay, which will hopefully be a thick book with an essay to every single topic. So I don't really even know how many topics there will be, but it will be a huge project that will be, you know, you make a project like that and then you will actually feel that you have done something for humanity. So yeah, I also painted one painting after the Charlie Hebdo massacre. I painted a Muhammad portrait, actually the front page of Charlie Hebdo. You find 2 videos on my YouTube channel. I'm gonna link it in after this video and in description, so you can watch that if you like. It's a 20-hour thing, so, and I play the whole Quran in the background when I painted. So it was the thing that I did because of there's not many things I'm willing to die for. I think this is my daughter, free speech, and I would put myself in danger for my parents and actually also some friends. So yeah. But anyway, I hope you enjoy, and I hope you give it a thumbs up, you leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel, and you will see all kinds of videos coming out, political stuff and beautiful stuff, you know, just beauty, like painting, yeah. So, okay, hope you see you in the next video, and share it with your friends. It's very important. This is also a new channel because the other one was hacked in January. So I'm trying to get this up to 1,000 subscribers so I can actually get into the algorithm and start earning some money on it again. So please help me doing that. It will be really appreciated that you subscribe. Okay, stay cool, keep painting, keep living, keep thinking, keep having fun.
Christopher Hitchens, a former columnist for The Nation. Christopher Hitchens is by no means a stranger to controversy. He found himself in a number of very heated and public disputes with people he proclaimed himself to be former comrades and allies in the wake of September 11th, after he came out in support of the Bush administration's plans for Iraq and Afghanistan. Aside from The Nation, he is now contributing editor to Vanity Fair and writes regularly for the Times Literary Supplement and the online magazine Slate.com, amongst many others. His books include The Missionary Position, Mother Teresa in Theory and Practice, it always gets a laugh. The title always gets a laugh. The Trial of Henry Kissinger, and his most recent work, Love, Poverty, and War, Journeys and Essays. So, that's it from my role. It is my great privilege to introduce to all of you Dr. Michael Prenti and Christopher Hitchens.
How about moderating?
Is anybody else there?
That's all right. Go on.
Are you alright? Okay. Can everybody hear me? This thing almost set us out. No. Can everybody hear me now? Alright. Now it's on. Wow. Okay. So, by agreement, opening tonight will be Christopher Hitchens.
Thank you, Sasha, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, comrades and friends, for brothers and sisters, I hope I can say, for coming. I can't say that, okay. Have you ever known that to fail? Am I audible to all? Very good. I recently realized after returning from a long trip to Iran that I'd become the only person, I think, since the year 2000 to have reported from both from Iran, from Iraq, and from North Korea. In other words, to have, without particularly wishing to, have become an expert in axes of evil. And I'll just say to begin with that it's a huge pleasure to be invited to debate these grave matters in what seems to me to be the Hogwarts dining hall. Some of you look from where I'm standing reassuringly antique. I can see some veteran visages in the hall, but I also noticed that quite a lot of you are terrifyingly young. And I wanted, this is perhaps a pity, but I hope it won't be, because I want to date my remarks from the year 1989, in fact, to be specific, from the fall of that year, which will be perhaps a legend or an early memory to some of you, but which is always worth looking up. It was in that year that tremendous act of social and national emancipation occurred, not just in the countries of the former Soviet Empire and its dependencies, who saw their former masters and their former system of banana republic socialism melting away, but an emancipation for all of us too, all of us like myself. I was born in 1949, who've been brought up in the shadow not just of the Cold War, but of its corollary, the arms race, the permanent threat of nuclear extinction, the zero-sum and authoritarian manner in which all political arguments had to be conducted, whether it was Chile or South Africa, or Vietnam, or Poland or Czechoslovakia. Everything one found, one attempted to make sense or to deploy reason, was shoehorned into the conscripting categories of the Cold War, with over it all the time the possibility that a final solution would be found in the form of a thermonuclear extinction. To be freed from this and from its counterpart, the concept of the one-party dictatorial state, was an extraordinary moment of what I suppose I'd now have to call euphoria. It didn't seem so euphoric at the time, though there were beautiful moments to it. I was in Romania, for example, for the end of the Ceausescu dictatorship. It seemed realistic. We began to hear some foolishness being uttered. Professor Fukuyama's prediction of the end of history, I think now, as I thought then, was perhaps a little premature. But there were reasons to think that a synthesis might be possible, that some of what had been learned by the socialist movement in its long struggle through the 19th and 20th centuries could be used to tame the concept of the free market society and the open market society. that there would be money to spare at last. There was talk, not idealistic talk only, of a peace dividend in those days. Some of you will remember it perhaps with a pang. What we were spending on weapons of mass destruction could perhaps be deployed to nobler ends, and it might even be possible to have another look at the terms of trade that governed relations between the rich and poor worlds. It was not a bad little time in which to be alive, in other words. I haven't done the exact maths, but you can do it in your head. How long did this period last? This period of feeling that there was only one future model, and that whatever form it took, it would have to take a democratic form, a pluralist form. That the age of the totalitarian despot was gone. I would say the Berlin Wall fell on, I think, November the 9th, 89. Ceausescu was dead by Christmas Eve of the same year. If we date it, say, from New Year's 1990, I think it gives us about 6.5 months of this illusion. Because in 6.5 months, Slobodan Milosevic had invaded Bosnia, and Saddam Hussein had not just invaded Kuwait, people say invade, hadn't occupied Kuwait even. He had annexed Kuwait, made part of Iraq, what had up till then been a member state of the United Nations, a member in good standing of the Arab League, and an independent country, and had said that it no longer existed, an unprecedented form of promiscuous aggression. And we found, no, we haven't got rid of the one-party leader, the man who believes that he is God. We haven't got rid, even the Balkans, of this, and we haven't got rid of it in the Middle East, and it's still restless and sleepless, and it means us harm. And within a year or so of that, a similarly ideological party had seized control in Rwanda and decided to embark on a final solution of its own. And the one had previously thought unsurpassable cult of the personality and of the one God, one leader, one party state had metamorphosed in Korea, North Korea, from father to son. And all along, and unnoticed by many people, another ideology, a totalitarian ideology, based on race and nation and religion and absolutism, was gathering strength unofficially in many other countries. I mean to say by this, the ideology of jihad, the ideology of holy war, where the one ideology is replaced by the one religion, where the one infallible leader is replaced by the one God, and where only one book is required, and where all of human culture that doesn't conform to this book is to be treated as something to be dynamited or destroyed or profaned. These people wish us ill. Now, what was the response of Western democracies to this? In Rwanda, it was for Madeleine Albright, I'll take them in no particular order. Madeleine Albright, on Mr. Clinton's instructions, vetoed the resolution from the Czech Republic that asked for a mere doubling of the tiny United Nations force in Kigali that might, if it had been beefed up, have at least warned the Rwandan government that its plans were known. It was decided at the United Nations by Kofi Annan in person, the man who received the faxes and warnings from Kigali to let Rwanda go. It wasn't worth fighting for. It took 5 years before it was discovered that the rule of Slobodan Milosevic in Bosnia and the mad idea, in Serbia, and the mad idea that he could make national and international borders conform to ethnic patterns and cleanse those who didn't fit, was not compatible with peace in Europe. And after the eviction of Saddam Hussein from Kuwait, it took a further 10, perhaps to 12 years for us to make the elementary discovery that we have to keep on making, it seems, every generation. Our life, however much we may reserve our own right to criticize it, our way of life, as it's sometimes called, the things that we value in our own society and in our own culture, is not compatible with the existence of totalitarian, aggressive, expansionist dictatorship. I myself am happy with the conclusion that our life and culture are not compatible with this, because I don't think it's desirable that we should collude and collaborate or coexist with aggressive totalitarian dictatorship. And since our special subject this evening is Iraq, I hope I've put it in some context to you. I must explain as honestly as I can why it is that I came to the conclusion that a settlement of accounts with Saddam Hussein must be made, and that the Iraqi people must be helped to move into the post-Saddam Hussein era. As I've just said, I'm not a fetishist of the rules of the United Nations or of its procedures, the ones that abandoned Rwanda and Bosnia, for example, and that allowed a Russian veto or a Chinese veto on any attempt to do anything about these things as well. I remind you that in May of the year 2003, Iraq was going to become the chairman of the United Nations Special Committee on Disarmament. In other words, the Committee on Disarmament would have been headed by someone appointed by Saddam Hussein. At the same period, the Human Rights Committee of the United Nations, I think, had the chairmanship of Colonel Gaddafi. The United Nations had failed us very badly in all these crises, and I want you to keep that in mind as we go along. But let us apply the criteria that the United Nations itself applies for discovering when a state has put itself outside the pale, when it has lost its sovereignty, when the international community may be called upon to intervene. There are 4 conditions under which it may be said that a state has lost its sovereignty. Sacrificed it. 1. Repeated aggressions against neighboring states, or occupations of or annexations of same. 2nd, violations of the Genocide Convention. The Genocide Convention, for those who sign it, we are among the signatories, mandates action without further recourse to any further resolution in the case of genocide, either to prevent or to punish it. That's mandatory. 3rd, collusion by the relevant state with international gangsters and harboring, in other words, of terrorism. 9th. 4th, violations of the Non-Proliferation Treaty or other, shall we say, promiscuous behavior in respect to weapons of mass destruction. Iraq meets all 4 of those conditions in a serial manner. It had invaded Iran, it had tried to destroy and abolish, obliterate the state of Kuwait. It still retained the ambition to repeat both aggressions. It had violated the Genocide Convention by very well and exhaustively documented state campaign of murder, known as the Anfal campaign, of which we have now all the incriminating documents in our possession, to try and not just disperse, but to destroy the Kurdish population of northern Iraq, using for the purpose, as it had with the intervention in Iran, weapons of mass destruction, principally of chemical description and type. It had sheltered Mr. Yassin, the man most wanted for the blowing up of the World Trade Center in New York in 1993. It had sheltered Mr. Abu Nidal, who, before the advent of Mr. Osama bin Laden, was the most wanted international gangster in the world, specializing in the assassination of democratic members of the Palestine Liberation Organization. It had, in the name of its own president, Saddam Hussein, openly paid a bounty for every suicide bomber operating in the Israeli-Palestine dispute, and its agents and envoys had been repeatedly meeting with agents and envoys of Al-Qaeda in various locations in what I would describe as a kind of Hitler-Stalin pact between 2 discrepant forms of jihadist regime. It had adopted itself the ideology of jihad, dropping its old Ba'athist fascism, and finally it refused stubbornly and repeatedly to come into compliance with any United Nations resolution governing weapons of mass destruction. It never came into compliance until the last day of its existence. It had a special Department of State for the concealment of weapons of mass destruction, and had never given an account of the weapons that it had declared to the UN inspectors some years before. The option of further coexistence with such a regime simply did not exist. And all of this would have been the case long before we became aware, in the abrupt way in which we became made aware of it, of the really genuine threat of an Islamic fascism that, among other things, the beggaring and destruction of Afghanistan, the reduction of Afghanistan to a serf state, with women as chattel and Shia Muslims as targets in a free fire zone, bankruptcy, misery, starvation, slavery. Not only had such achievements as that to its credit, but had managed in a small way to build a secret army within the borders of the United States. mention that crux point because I can't not mention it, but I want to draw your attention to two things. Before the year 2001, it had been decided by a vote in the Senate of the Iraq Liberation Act in the year 1998 on the initiative of the Clinton-Gore administration, that the policy of the United States government should be the removal of the government of Saddam Hussein. That was a vote in which there was no contrary vote in the Senate, a unanimous vote to adopt the Iraq Liberation Act as American policy. The two best speeches given, in fact, about the certainty of an ultimate confrontation with Saddam Hussein on the matter of weapons and terrorism, if nothing else, were both made by President Clinton at that period. And a very significant speech made by Prime Minister Tony Blair in Chicago in 1999, after the departure of Slobodan Milosevic to The Hague, where he quite properly stands trial for war crimes and crimes against humanity, saying that this did not mean the struggle was over, because down the road there was undoubtedly going to be a meeting with Saddam Hussein and his party and the crime family with which he ran Iraq as the psychopathic state that it was, the private property of a sadistic minority.
You have 2 minutes.
Very well. I don't think I'm going to need two. If I haven't persuaded you by now that this was something that had to happen, was going to happen, probably ought to have happened in 1991 when the opportunity presented itself after the Kuwait War. I may not be able to do so in the remaining 90 seconds. What I want to dispel, though, is what I believe to be a very widespread impression that there was something improvised or faked or contrived or confected about this confrontation. I hope I've said enough to persuade you, or at least to invite you to consider persuading yourselves, that what you're so glibly told about Iraq becoming a sudden target of opportunity for the Halliburton Company, or something to enhance the Bush administration's credibility after the reverses in 2001, is not really true. And that those, or in fact, isn't true at all. And that those of us who some years ago decided to range ourselves on the side of the heroic forces of opposition among Iraqi Arabs and Kurds, those who dared to think that it would be possible to take down and remove the disgusting, unlawful regime of Saddam Hussein, can be proud of what we've done, as I am. Because not only can Iraq now be certified as disarmed, which it now at last can. If you wanted to certify it as disarmed before, you'd have had to take Saddam Hussein's word for it, which I would strongly recommend you don't do. Not only are those who perpetrated the genocide at long last being ranged in the dock and brought to justice and made to face their victims, not only are the neighboring countries to Iraq able to breathe more freely because they know that a sleepless aggressor and conspirer across their borders is no longer there, but better than all that, and better than all the conformity with international resolutions that I mentioned before, I've had the opportunity to see something that I hope you one day get the chance to see too, which is what people looks like when it's been liberated. There was no experience like that. No experience like the look on the face of people who suddenly find themselves free, who had up till then been the property of the state and victims of torture and tyranny. And to be able to do this and all those other things too,
thank you,
is something that I envy those who didn't do it.
Thank you, Mr. Hitchens. Thank you.
Okay, welcome to the end of the video. I'm going to show you the painting here, so you can actually see it, and there will also be a link to the text, if you can see it here. This is a very important project for me, and I will do my utmost to get this done before I'm dead. So please subscribe, give a thumbs up, tell me what you think, and also check out my Muhammad paintings, and also check out my Patreon and sign up for $1 or $5 if you like to support my work. Thank you.